Seventh grade. How's it going, seventh grade? All right, so today we're still working on two-step equations. But today we're going to do two-step division equations. All right, so that's seventh grade. And you guys will be watching this on the 8th. All right, so division equations are actually a little easier than the ones we were doing. Because remember, we always do the opposite. With the multiplication equations, we have to divide. The division equations, we get to multiply. So these are written a number of different ways. Could be written like that. X divided by 2 equals 12. Or you'll see it written like this. X divided by 2 equals 12. These both mean the same thing, all right? And we solve these just like we solve any other equation. We draw our line. Now these are just one-step ones, but we'll talk about the two-step ones in a minute. And the negative the negative rules still apply. A positive times a negative equals a negative. And a negative times a negative equals a positive. And don't forget, it doesn't matter which one's bigger or smaller. That's with adding and subtracting, not with multiplying and dividing. Okay? All right, so x divided by 2 equals 12. We just do the opposite. What's the opposite of divided by 2? Times 2, right? Now use a dot for times, so it doesn't get mixed up with the x, okay? So same thing, they cancel out. X equals 12 times 2 is 24, okay? This one's going to be done the exact same way. You have x divided by 2. Below that, I'm going to write times 2. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. Those cancel out. Bring down my x equals 24, okay? So not too hard. They look a little different because it looks like a fraction, but that's just x divided by 2, okay? So let's look at ones, some two-step ones, because they look the same way. And I'm mostly going to write them with the fraction version, because that's how you're going to see them more often as you guys get older. You won't see that division side very often. So let's do x divided by negative 3 plus 6 equals 11. All right, so two-step equations. We know step 1 is add and subtract. And step 2 is multiply and divide. All right? So we draw our line. And we want to add and subtract first, right? So remember, my goal is to get this x by itself, right? So the opposite of plus 6 is minus 6. We do the one farther away first, right? Subtract 6 on this side. Let's cancel out. We get 5. And I still have x divided by negative 3. All right, so here's the tricky part. Everybody's going to want to add 3 here to get that x by itself. But remember, this is x divided by negative 3, right? So the opposite of divide by negative 3 is times negative 3. If I do it to one side, I do it to the other. The negative 3's cancel out. All I have left is x. Now I have a positive times a negative. Positive times a negative is a negative, right? So my answer is going to be negative. 5 times 3 is 15. All right? So they look a little tricky, but they're kind of the same thing that we've been doing. Look at one more. We'll throw some negatives in here. All right. So we draw our line, right? Cut this problem in half. I have negative 5 equals x divided by 2 plus 3, okay? So step one is add and subtract. Remember, our goal is to get this by itself. So I have to get rid of the divide by 2, and I have to get rid of the plus 3. Get rid of the plus 3 first, right? Because we're adding and subtracting first. So I'm going to subtract 3. And if I do that, we have to do the same thing over here, right? Don't add 5. That's not going to help us get the x by itself. We always want to get the letter by itself. Okay, so those are gone. Same signs. We add and keep the sign, right? This is adding and subtracting now. So it's not going to be negative times negative spot. No, no. Same signs. We add and keep the sign, right? 5 plus 3 is 8. Keep the sign. Okay, so negative 8 equals x divided by 2. What's the opposite of divide by 2? Times 2. We do it to one side, we do it to the other, right? Those are gone. We get x equals, positive times a negative is a negative, right? Negative 16. All right, so that's all there really is to those. Just remember, this is division. The opposite of dividing is multiplying, right? Do your things in order. Add and subtract first, then multiply and divide. Yes, I know it's the opposite of order of operations. That's because everything we do in equations is kind of opposites, okay? Next year in 8th grade, we'll get up to 5-step equations. But this year, it's just 2 steps, okay? And we'll keep practicing these. We'll get good at them for the next couple days. We'll have a test, and we'll move on to something new. All right, you guys have a great Tuesday, and I'll see you tomorrow at class.